Hello, everybody. Welcome, and happy holidays. Hope you are doing well. What is your personal weather forecast for today? I'm Elisa Barba, and I am in sunny San Diego. It's what, 70 degrees, as it almost always is. So put something in the chat. Let us know how you're feeling. Not so much how the weather is, but what is your personal weather forecast for today?
We see some cloudy weather here in the chat. It's sunny where I am. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Evansville, Indiana. And today is sunny, a little bit chilly, but definitely chilly. Oh, we have somebody sniffly with a chance of cold. We hope they feel better.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Elisa Barba. I am the Managing Director of America Amplified, and our chat invigorator today is Paola Salazan, who's one of our engagement trainers. Welcome. Welcome to everybody.
Let us know the weather where you are at right now. In New Mexico, it's windy.
Where you are at personally right now, not necessarily the weather outside, but how you are feeling today. We have 2 or 3 minutes where we're just welcoming everybody, giving people a chance to join the session 5. Welcome, everybody. Please put in the chat, what is your personal weather forecast for today? We want to hear.
We see that somebody said it's colder in their office than it is outside. I know the feeling.
Welcome.
Oh no, Jen, we hope you feel better. Oh, at least it's sunny there, right? Hopefully you can get some rays.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to those of you in other time zones than the West Coast. I'm Elisa, and we want to hear what's your personal weather forecast for today. Ali and Dolly.
Yes, we have some holiday spirits in the chat. I like that.
Welcome.
Somebody says sunny and low 30s, same as them. I get that.
Low 30s. Ooh, sounds chilly. I grew up in Minnesota, and so I used to be tough, but I've been here too long.
I love how Paola says it's freezing with 64-degree weather in Arizona. We're feeling ya.
Yes, I feel that.
Welcome,
it took me so long to get used to the weather here, so
we're getting pretty close to having a quorum here. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your day. We hope to make this not just informative, but also entertaining and super interesting. We are going to move into our session now. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us and sharing with us your personal weather forecast. I am going to talk. I'm Elisa Barba. I'm the managing editor, managing editor of America Amplified. I'm going to give you a little bit of a sense of what our agenda is for today. We're going to be talking about community partnerships, as you can see in front of you on the screen. What are community partnerships? Why are they good? What are the upsides? What are the downsides? As you will learn today, this is the secret sauce of engagement. But what makes a good partnership? What you might think you know, all of us who've been in long-term marriages have a pretty good idea of what a good partnership or a bad partnership might be. But what makes you a good community partner, and what can you give back to your communities? What makes an equitable partnership? And how do you do it? How do you develop community partnerships? And how do you do it in a way that is not extractive, but is equitable? There will obviously be a lot of time to ask questions. You're going to be working with other peers from other stations because you've told us over and over again that you want more time with these other stations. So that's what we're going to be doing. But before we dive in, let's do a little bit of a quiz on what we've done in the past. I'm handing it to Jen Brandell.
Hello, everyone from a WeWork phone booth. Want to do a quick pop quiz to see if you remember what happened the last time we met, which feels like years ago, but it was pretty recently. Okay, we're going to start with question number 1. Get ready to load your answer in the chat to this, but don't hit send yet. The answer is, or the question is it likely that your strategy will be the exact same when engaging your audience and engaging your community of focus? Type yes or no, but don't hit it yet in the chat. Would your strategy be the exact same when engaging audience and community of focus? All right, I'll give you 5 more seconds to put your answer and get ready to load. 3, 2, 1. Okay, hit enter. Ooh, no. All right, we have some really on point students here. I love it. Let's see, all no's, I believe. Nope, different demographics need different strategies. Thank you, Brittany. Excellent. So we'll go on to the next slide. Just as a reminder, you might use the same prompt. You might try to get similar information from your community or your audience, but your strategy for how to reach them is going to be different. Our kind of short version, our like colloquialism is going to your house for your audience and going to their house for the community of focus that you're working with. Okay, second question. It's going to be a quick pop quiz. Does acknowledging / featuring the people who participate in the stories you produce increase the likelihood that they will share your journalism? Yes or no? Throw that in the chat when you're ready. Don't hit send yet. Does acknowledging and featuring the people who participate in the stories increase the likelihood they will share your journalism? Okay, ready? Hit send. Ooh, I love this. Ooh, yes, and I love Little Rock, your grimace, your like grin here. That's terrific. Yes, it's true. We'll go to the next slide. It is verifiable that when you include the people who you are featuring in the work that you do, we'll just go back one, no big deal.
Yes.
That
Boom,
the depth
there you
of their
go.
participation is related to the likelihood that they're going to share your content. When they're included, when they're named, when their photos in there, when their voice is in there, they're going to be much more likely to tell the world they were in the news, and for a good reason. So excellent. You all get 100% on your pop quiz, and I'll throw it back to Elisa to get us ready for today's partnerships session.
Okay, thanks so much, Jen. That was great. I am here to introduce JMR. If you haven't met her, if you haven't worked with her, this is the time to put her full screen if you can. I have to just tell a little bit of story. I was running a local journalism collaborative called Inside Energy about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was a CPB funded LJC, and the CPB has always really stressed community engagement. And I have to confess that I really didn't, I was an editor and a news person. I really didn't have a sense of what community engagement was, and I really didn't understand why we had to do it. But we hired, as part of this LJC, a community engagement producer. And I sent her off to a conference in Oregon, which was probably the one and only community engagement conference, or one of the very few community engagement conferences that have been held. And she came back raving about this woman who worked at Cap Radio in Sacramento. And that was Jessica Maria Ross. And since then, obviously, I have come to know her, and I'm so privileged to be able to work with her. Poor thing. She had COVID last week, which is why we had to put off this session. And as you can see, she's still blowing her nose and still doing that. But I want to introduce JMR to you. She is a fabulous resource for all of us. Some links here that we will be sharing in the chat for you to read a little bit more what she's done and what she's preaching. But today she's here to share with us her wisdom on community partnerships. So welcome, JMR.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming today. It was really hard to postpone last week, and I'm so excited to be here. My voice and energy might not quite project today my love of partnerships, but please know it is deep and wide, because I worked in public radio, as Elisa said, for about a decade. until I came to America Amplified, and I was a senior community engagement strategist. And all of the projects, every single last one of them, involved one or more community partners. And so it was my job to like create them, cultivate them, steward them, make them happen. And I don't come from a traditional journalism background, so I had a lot to learn about how to develop partnerships through a newsroom, which is very unique. I also had a lot to learn about how to kind of motivate and create the internal capacity to make them happen from a public media perspective. And the whole time I was doing that work, I could not ever find any guides or tip sheets or trainings to help me learn how to do partnerships through and with public media. So that's really what this training is set up to do today. It's a conversation starter. There's so much to go over, so this will be kind of our primer. Um, I'm hoping to really go over ideas and questions as you all consider bringing on partners for your engaged elections projects. And I want to note, last session, our friend Mark Simpson, I see he's in the room, over at Maine Public, asked the question, like, are they necessary? Are partnerships necessary for doing this engaged election work? And what I would say is, they're not necessary, especially if you're going to be doing the foundational level of engagement, where, as Jen said, you're kind of really operating in your house. I would say that to do the expanded or the full scale types of engagement, partnerships are incredibly helpful, especially if you're working in and with communities who don't know you or maybe don't trust you. So I want to kind of put that forward. And so with that in mind, let's kind of dive in to the ideas of community partnerships. And I want to start with the idea of why develop those partnerships. And excuse me, I'm going to be on mic with you in my fullness today. So let's get started with this question. And this might seem like the most obvious question, but I can tell you that in my newsroom, we didn't ever actually talk about these things before we just jumped right in. So just to kind of seed the conversation, I want to start with this question: why partner or why not? And here's how I want to do that. Abby, our queen of the breakout room, is going to send you off to talk with another newsroom in just a moment. And in that conversation, I'd like you to talk about two things. The first is, why collaborate with community partners? I'd like you to really have a conversation about how can it enhance your work? Or why not? How does it hold you back? So those are the two questions. Paula, our chat invigorator, is dropping it in the chat, so you have it for you. We're going to send you off for a good 7 or 8 minutes. Have that conversation and come back prepared to share 1 or 2 key ideas. All right, let's start. Abby, can you send them out into Zoomlandia? All right. Welcome back. As people are filtering back in, I'm very interested to see what came up in your breakout room. So here's what I'd like you to do. You've done this before. It's what we call the chat waterfall. I would like you to go ahead and put one answer in the chat that came up about why partner. How can it help us? But don't hit send. Just go ahead and load it up so that we can see something that came up in your group in response to why partner. How does it enhance our work? Drop an idea in the chat, load it up. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to do that, and we will let it go in just a second. Thank you, Josephine, for getting us
Sorry.
No, that richer storytelling. Bring it. Okay, everyone go ahead and hit send. Let's see what you got. Oh, wow.
Wow. Okay, here it comes. I'm gonna help read through some of these ideas here. Wow, amazing. Okay, this is like a whole blog post worth of stuff. To have new sources that help us trust, to share ideas. It helps with the authenticity of our reporting. It broadens perspectives, help better reach underserved communities, helps find new audiences altogether, builds more trust, reach communities we wouldn't reach. Easy way to build capacity. I love that. If you are not able to hire because, money doesn't grow on trees, having people collaborate and partner with you is a way of saving money and doing something bigger. Reaching geographic areas where we can't normally be. Partners have trust in communities where you might not. Reach new people, give you credibility, mutually beneficial outcomes. Oh yeah, create the germ of a relationship that can grow way after election day. I'm gonna, say germ in terms of like germinate, not like a virus. Uh, and let me see. Oh, helping reach people who don't listen to your newsroom, expand the people you engage with, uncover stories that weren't on your radar, help people feel seen. Yes. Oh my gosh. Beautiful. I feel like I've gotten some of the main themes here, just seeing if there's anything else.
I'm doing the same thing. I feel like we can just stop now.
All right. Yeah, you guys
I mean,
set it off.
you all said it. You all put it all. I mean, we put a few ideas here up on the screen. You actually covered all of them. No one brought up the T word, trust, but that is kind of underneath so much of what you've talked about. Maybe that one or two that I might tease out here, but again, it's so much a part of what you talked about in this chat waterfall is really tapping into expertise and networks that can help make your project successful, especially when it comes to public service journalism, really being able to connect more with what are the needs and how to get your stories out to those audiences. So and also a lot of you I know are going to be doing listening sessions, and partnerships are also a great way to find places and support for having those sessions. Let's turn to the next piece, because these are all the why. This is, very clear. But let's just also talk about sometimes the elephant in the room. Why not? So I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. If you would just load up in the chat one idea that came up in your conversation about why not partner. And don't hit send yet. We're just going to go and load them all up so that we can kind of see the wisdom of the group all at one time. Give you a few more seconds to do that. And all right, go ahead and hit send. And Jen, woo!
Wow. All right. Here we go. So why not? Perceived bias in reporting, potentially, possible political assumptions, a conflict of interest, potentially. Partner could appear partisan to some audience members. So this idea of like, what's the perception of there's something more at play here? Difficult to set boundaries in mutually beneficial partnerships. That is a great point that we will spend a lot of time today on trying to figure out how do you set those boundaries and expectations. Political, maintaining ethical boundaries. more time consuming, and there's limited resources. Sometimes they don't always understand the news gathering process.
Mm-hmm.
Time consuming, yep. Takes work. Cultural differences may inhibit trust unless they're authentic. If you don't have the right intentions, it cannot go well or can go sideways. Yeah, wow. A lot of folks really thinking about here the conflict of interest potentially or editorial influence, editorial policies. So those are kind of the time and the perceived bias or potential of bias.
Yeah. And, the thing I want to mention about all of this is that, and again, you captured the ones that we were thinking about when we were kind of going over the landscape of some of the challenges. And what I want to say, looking at this whole list, interesting that this list is shorter than the Y partner. So that I think is interesting. But the other piece is that all of these concerns are really legitimate. And that's something I want to say from the jump, that it's what's really important, I think, especially in the two that Jen, you highlighted, is that it's really important to surface them, name them, and have an opportunity to discuss them. And that is, in fact, what we'll be doing. Not so much in this training because it's quite a bit to talk about, but what we'll be doing is having time to really explore any of those blockers, concerns in our cohorts, because they're different depending on what you'll be doing and with whom, and also with your coaches. So the kind of flag I want to plant after this last activity is that there are a lot of good reasons to bring on community partners. It is really helpful to identify any of the challenges that you are perceiving in advance and have time with coaches and cohorts to really explore them, to make sure that going into partnerships is what's right for you at this time. One of the other reasons I wanted to bring this up and do partnerships as part of our 6-session training before the end of the year is that partnerships do take time. They kind of require a bit of a runway. So as you are thinking about partnerships, as you are ready to bring them on, it's useful to start thinking as early as possible. So because they take time. So that's a bit about the why and maybe the why not. And knowing that we're going to be continuing that conversation as we go in our cohorts and coaching. What I want to do now is kind of switch gears and talk about what makes them effective. There's the why and the why not, but let's look at the what. And, and especially in terms of like the characteristics of a good partnership. So it's a little hard for me to see everybody, but I can see about 20 of you. Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you have done a collaboration or a partnership, either at work or at home? Can you see either a physical show of hands? Look at that. Okay. Wait, let me look. Physical show of hands. I see a lot of bring on those emojis, reactions. Love it. Okay. I'm looking, it's almost everybody. Not quite everybody. Not everybody. I'm not seeing those hands. Interesting. All right. So there we go. Thank you, Maya. Getting a late show of hands. Okay. So what I think is that here we go. Excuse me. Why I wanted to ask you that is that I think there's a lot of wisdom in the room. And I want to tap into that wisdom for this next activity. So here's what I'd like you to do. And I am going to jump out of the screen share in a second so that we can give you some lo-fi music to work with. But here's what I'd like you to do. Like you to grab a pen or pencil or maybe start a document on your computer. And I want you to just take 90 seconds to 2 minutes to think about a time, a partnership or collaboration that really worked for you. one that was incredibly awesome. Could be at home or at work. Maybe it was in the community or at school or with friends, but cast your mind to a partnership or collaboration. I use those terms interchangeably, that really worked for you. And then I would like you to really think about what specifically made it work so well. Maybe it was what happened. Whoops. Thank you. Maybe it was what happened or how it happened, who was involved, what they did, or what resulted. But think about that and take some time and just get some specifics about what made it work for you. So Jen, if you want to bring up some lo-fi music and give everybody some time to reflect, and that will set us up for getting into breakout groups. All right, we're going to take about another 30 seconds. And go ahead and start to wrap up your ideas. All right, Ms. Jen, if you want to bring down that lovely lo-fi music, and I will just use my voice to kind of call people back to us. And if you would, Jen, go ahead and advance the slide. Here's what I would like us to do next. You've had a chance to think about what made it work so well for you. Let's have some time in breakout rooms to hear what made a collaboration work, the specific things that made a collaboration work so well for others. So I'm going to ask you to do 3 things in this next breakout room. The first is just quickly go around and share your specifics. It might be tempting to tell the story of your awesome collaboration. I'm going to invite you not to do that, but just to really focus on the specifics of what made it so good. And then the second thing I would like you to do is to then identify a couple of common themes. that have come out of your group experience, your individual experiences, excuse me. And then the third thing is Paola's dropping in the chat right now a Google Doc. I would like you to click on that Google Doc. And what you will see in the Google Doc is, let me just make sure that it's getting in there. Let me go ahead and drop it in for you.
It's there.
Oh, it's there. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't quite see that. Okay, so if you could click on that Google Doc and you'll see a set series of tables. Just have your group grab one table and document the couple of common themes you've come up with. Okay, so once again, go around and share some of your individual experiences, come up with a couple of commonalities, and put it in the Google Doc. That is what we're up to. All right, we're going to give you a good 10 minutes to do that. So, Abby, if you would please go ahead and send people into their breakout rooms. All right, as people are coming back, let's see. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. So I have to say that I think you all have just created one of the best documents for public media practitioners to do partnerships. I wish I had the Google document that you just created. It's got so much rich information. I'm going to invite you to have that as a resource, and we will also put it together and send it back out to you in a more beautified way. But for now, Jen, as we were looking at that, what were some of the key things that you saw coming through across all those groups?
Oh, I loved looking at these come up in action, but one of the biggest things was open and honest communication. Also, consistency and follow through, not doing things every so often, but really making sure that the partnership is calendarized, for lack of a better word. Combining strengths of different sized organizations and expertise. So, how can you complement and fill in for one another based on what the strengths are? And then a clear understanding of goals, roles, and responsibilities that cannot be said enough, as well as flexibility. So those are some of the main themes that I saw coming up.
Right. And we're going to actually, you guys are previewing, we're going to be talking a lot about that after our break. I also want to note that as we feed back some of the things we're seeing, if you have questions, always feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to have a big Q&A after the break. So we're giving headlines, but if you want more specifics, we're here for it. Brittany, let me toss it to you. I know you've been looking across the public media landscape around community partnerships. Are there any things that are coming up that you're seeing that are especially useful to lift up?
Yeah, I want to tease out someone had a really great contribution of saying, combined strengths and expertise. I think that's really great. Different people have different skill sets, and it's great to be in partnerships that highlight those skill sets. Maybe you've got a partner who's really good at leading arts workshops. That's a really cool thing to be able to utilize and to be able to highlight for people. I want to highlight trust. Trust is a vital thing to have in a partnership, and sometimes it really changes the outcome. You can go to a partner with an idea about how to reach a certain community, and if that partner says, that's actually not the best way of going about this, let us teach you otherwise, having trust makes you more receptive to the idea, which can make the project more successful in the long run. And that kind of dovetails right into just teaching each other. There's a lot of context in our different worlds that we don't necessarily understand. People don't understand how news gathering works or some of the different boundaries we have to hold. And being able to take a partnership and contribute some expertise and share with them what our world is like, and educate people, doing a little media literacy can be really helpful in the long-term success of some of these projects.
Paula, you do so much work in communities of color across the country. And I know a lot of us are going to be focusing on those communities in our projects. Is there anything that you saw that you also would like to say a little bit about?
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of things, but something that came up or just stood out for me, from San Diego KPBS and WAMU, they said that finding new ways to communicate with other audiences through the partner. And to me, that resonated a lot because sometimes radio stations, we are trying to cover this new audience, but we might not understand a lot about them or the issues that affect them. So bringing in that partnership really, opens up the opportunity to learn about them and also to just connect with them through those partners. So, being culturally aware and knowing a little bit more about your audience through them, it's really helpful. So.
Elisa, anything else you want to add before we segue?
I was just going to note that, I mean, doing these kinds of exercises, taking the time to do these kinds of exercises, again, it seems like a lot of it is very self-evident, but thinking about these things, articulating them and writing them down helps to establish a pathway forward. So again, I'm going to thank you for taking the time to do this, and I trust it will be valuable. We see the value already.
Thank you so much. One of the things that I also want to, again, just say is that I see this session together with you all as the beginning of a conversation. And a lot of these activities are really set up to kind of, seed the conversation in our cohorts and in our coaching. It's really clear to me looking at this Google Doc, which again, we will beautify and send back out so that you can have as a resource in talking with your teams, and in building your partnerships. It's clear that you all have so much experience. And one of the reasons, one of the things again that Elisa just mentioned, but I want to just underscore it, is to recognize that we do know how to do this work. And we can also be turning to each other to share our skills and our best practices. So thank you for indulging in that. I do want to do one more activity before the break, and I'm going to invite Jen to go ahead and bring up one of our very fun slides. There we go. So, we talk about what makes a good partnership, and you all just created like the best cheat sheet for like qualities and characteristics specifically of successful and good partnerships, drawing on your own experience. I want to spend a minute to talk about what makes you a good partner. Because here's something else that I discovered when I worked with first my station in California and other stations. I don't think sometimes we spend time really articulating what it is we have to offer and being clear about that when we come to the table with partnerships. So here's what I would like to do. I would like us to, oh, excuse me. Thank you, Jen. So here are the two questions I have on the table before we take a break. And again, we're going to do a little bit of crowdsourcing and give you all a chance to come on mic and hear your voices. Here's the question. When you think about it from your newsroom perspective, what do you have to offer community partners? What motivates them to work with you? And this kind of dials back a little bit to some of the questions. I think Shireen brought this up and Diane O'Neill last session about like, how do you incentivize, partnerships? What do we bring to the table? So this is kind of comes out of those questions. So what do you have to offer community partners, and what would motivate them to work with you? So Paula has dropped those in the chat, so you have access. Jen, you can come off screen, and we're just gonna, have a bit of a conversation here. I would really like to hear different voices from around the country. How would you answer this question? Feel free to jump on mic, raise your hand, drop it in the chat, whatever is most comfortable for you. But what does your newsroom have to offer community partners? Laura, our platform getting their work out to broader audiences. Absolutely, right? And not just broader audiences, but most public media demographics, those audiences are audiences that that are influencers, that are decision makers, that are donors. So it's a very particular kind of audience as well. Natalie, we can help spark civic dialogue about issues that are important to our partners. That is huge, right? We have a megaphone, and we can get stories out and spark conversation. Absolutely. Cassidy, that you are statewide newsroom and statewide reach. This is huge, right? From the smallest community group, to a statewide organization, that's something that's going to be very important. Michael's talking about telling stories with their help and input, right? We are offering editorial input, shaping the stories that impact their lives and communities, that tell the narratives of how people understand their issues, their places, their histories. Yeah. Underreported issues. Thank you very much, Mark. Mia, we believe in uplifting diverse voices in our communities. Right. so that, you know, you have partners knowing that if their voices feel traditionally underheard, you have a way to be lifting them up. Rosna, am I pronouncing your name correctly? I'll just go ahead and say a team with wide range of skill sets, data journalism, visualization, narrative skill. You bring craft. You bring craft, and you're going to create pieces that are compelling that then they can actually use on their website, in their planned or existing communication. If you have shared goals, then they can be using your stories to advance ongoing conversation and community development. Absolutely. Connecting with an engaged audience, Zaki. We really look out for the partner and make sure they're getting what they deserve. Can you say a little bit more about that, Zaki?
Yeah, thank you. We're very attuned, and this is in our department, our community engagement department. We're very tuned in that when we have any kind of partnership, that it is mutually beneficial. And I've seen instances where it's a little bit extractive, and where, like, say, somebody from the newsroom, something like, okay, I got what I needed and I'm good. We make sure that the partner is really getting what they need out of the partnership as well. So we're really tuned into their needs. And I think that makes us a good partner. So we're not just going to take something from you and leave you alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Not all partnerships are like that. So I think what you're lifting up is a really important piece. And those ideas were in that document, right? Like, you know, shared goals, you know, making things equitable. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Emma, what do you mean by credibility? I'm sorry, Elma. My apologies. Elma, could you say a little bit more about what you mean by credibility?
I think just kind of the sense that people want to be associated with us because we bring a lot of credibility and, like, you know, there's a lot of community respect for us and what we do. And I think people kind of really want to kind of be a part of that as well.
Right. And that is no small thing. And that's why I'm glad that you've lifted that up. And Raja, thank you for giving me the pronouncer. I needed that. And then Stephanie, can you say, Stephanie Daniel, can you just read your piece and say a little bit about it? I want to just wrap up with that piece because I think it ties together so much about what we're doing in terms of partnerships for engaged elections.
Sure, I'm here with Lucas.
Hi there.
He'll expand more.
I might be a little blurry, but that's just because of the blur is not flat. But yeah,
Looks very Star Trek.
So you know, we started with, you know, connecting their communities. We're specifically focused on community partnerships with community colleges in the context of the election. So, you know, part of what we would be able to offer would connect, you know, their communities, these community college communities, with our audiences, but also offering, you know, expanding their, you know, political or voter initiatives by providing our context and expertise in what's going on currently, and being able to help, you know, their initiatives and what we're doing through that.
Right. And kind of another piece I'll just add to what you said, Lucas and Stephanie, that, you know, is in kind of how I translate that as well, is that you're able to also gather information, gather ideas about what kind of information is needed, and then put that information back out there. So, so those are some of the ideas that I wanted to just lift up, because I think, again, sometimes when we go to approach community partners, we have ideas of what they can do for us, or we have ideas of what we want to make happen. And sometimes we don't show up. And when I speak from experience, you know, we would show up all excited about what partners could do and how we could make a difference and all of this. And we never kind of said, and here's how we think you'll benefit. And here's what we would like to provide as part of this partnership. Here's how, when we look at your mission, we think we can help advance your goals and objectives. And they're all the ideas you just put in this chat. Again, we will save the chat. We're big fans of handouts, so we'll cull all of these ideas again, so that you have them as reminders to yourself as you are developing partnerships, as you're writing and sharing ideas with your newsroom, and also as you're doing kind of what we'll talk about after the break, which is getting internal alignment. You all clearly are quick studies. You all are into this. You're in it to do it. Other people around you in a newsroom may not be. Their focus and attention is elsewhere. So sometimes we need this language and this national kind of cohort of support to help us kind of build these systems and processes in our own newsrooms. So basically what we've just done for the last hour is gather all that information so that we can kind of collate it and give it back to you. From the why and the what. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we come back. We will get into some of the how to. So Jen has got a nice little timer. Please take a 5-minute break to do whatever you need to do. We'll come back at 10 after the hour and go into our next section about how to actually develop these community partnerships. We'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, I just realized that I was speaking to all of you, but I was on mute and of course also on off video. So let me try that again. Hello and welcome back. Let me use, excuse me, the power of my voice, such as it is. If you haven't met me before, I usually don't sound like I've done a couple of packs of Marlboros during the break. Welcome back. Um, all right. In this next section, we wanted to go from the why and the what to the how to, try and get a bit more practical and tactical by just developing and sharing with you a framework for starting to develop your community partnerships. So the roadmap for the next 50 minutes is that I'm going to spend maybe about 8 minutes, 10 minutes just going over this framework that we've just created just for you, because again, we haven't found one for public media in terms of developing partnerships. So we'll do that. And then my colleague Brittany will be coming on to really kind of highlight how all of the steps that I go over, what those look like in a case study, and then we're going to open it up to your questions. So as we go, if questions bubble up, go ahead and drop them in the chat. You'll just kind of start the conversation. So that's what we're doing. And then we'll give some time at the end for you to work with another station to talk about how to move some of your plans and ideas forward. So that's what's on tap. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So there are lots of ways to approach a partnership. And this is what I have found to be most successful when I'm developing partnerships through public media. So the first step is really to get internal alignment. And good news, you all do this all the time. So this is a step that you all know how to do, you have experience doing. Now you get to just apply it to bringing on community partners. So in this step, you're meeting with, team members, and you're really, really trying to figure out before you leave your house, like in your own house, what are the goals for this project, and how do you think partners are going to help you achieve that, right? You can link back to some of the ideas we talked about earlier in this session. Also, again, just like before the break, what do you have to offer community partners? As you talk to them, how are you going to be sharing your vision for how this will benefit them, and inviting them also to talk with you about how it will help achieve their goals? You also want to talk about if you have the capacity to be a good partner. So if you went back to that Google document that you all co-created, and those are the characteristics of a successful and good partnership, the qualities, you really want to think, in a team, if you have the bandwidth for that. Not all of us have bandwidth all the time to do partnerships, and that's a really important thing to note. If you do not have the bandwidth, or you don't think you can follow through on some of those qualities that got mentioned, then you can ask yourselves, what would we change in terms of workflows, staffing, or skill building so that we can be good partners? You also want to think about what role you're envisioning that they will be playing. Not that you will tell them that role, but have in mind what you're thinking about. So by role, here are 3 that I think are really common in partnerships through newsrooms. One I call the consultant. This is the role in which they're really giving you feedback to help your project be relevant and useful for their communities. They're really going to lend their name and their credibility to your project. They're going to connect you with sources, data, and events in the communities that you're trying to reach, that they represent. But when it comes to decision making, as a consultant, they're giving you guidance and you're making decisions. So this is a very comfortable and great place to start if you haven't done a lot of partnerships. You could also think of them as being your collaborator. That's where they're more involved with project planning and promotion and coordination. So those of you who want to do listening sessions, you might invite them to co-coordinate those with you or help you get your content to their communities. They're often contributing space or staffing for activities. They often help with cross promotion. You know, they bring other resources to the table. So for that reason, there's more joint decision making happening. Usually partners lead on the decisions for how to best serve their community, as well as what they'll take on, how and why, right? And then of course, newsrooms are really taking the lead on decisions of how to translate those activities to content. You could also think of them as a co-creator. In this regard, they're fully involved in every aspect, you know, design, implementation, evaluation. So they're bringing significant resources to the table and taking on significant responsibilities. And so again, with more responsibility and more resource contribution, they're probably more involved in decision making. Usually they, again, and they're making decisions about what's in their house, you're making decisions on what's in your house, but you make a lot of decisions jointly. I find that co-creating the role of co-creator is really great if you've already collaborated with an organization and you want to continue collaborating or take it to the next level. So you could see these are lower touch to higher touch. You could think about what role makes most sense given your goals and your bandwidth. So that's step one. In terms of step two, I talk about this as building shared vision. You know, this is where you start having these meetings with a potential partner and really sharing your ideas and having a conversation to really figure out, you know, what are the values or needs that you both share, your newsroom and your potential partner, or what outcomes that are important to your both, so you can develop those shared goals. This is a time to discuss, you know, roles, what they envision doing, you know, what you envision, finding some shared agreement on that. And then I often find asking the question, this kind of gets back to what Zachy was talking about, I think, earlier. Excuse me. What will help make this collaboration feel equitable? I find that most project partners really want to be involved in defining the project goals and how they're going to benefit directly from participating. That's usually what I find most important. But just asking this question opens up the space to signal to partners that that equity is important to you and that you want them to be involved in determining what feels equitable and how you'll go about it. That's the building the shared vision piece. Then, if you have kind of found, once you've mutually decided to go forward because you've found agreement on goals, roles, desired outcomes, a lot of those qualities in the Google Doc, you know, shared labor, who's leading on what, how you want to go forward, that's what you want to nail down next. You can do this in terms of thinking about activities, you know, what activities will you do together? You know, I've seen from a lot of conversations across the country with people in this group. Some people want to have advisory boards. Some people want to do listening sessions. Others want to do events. So what are the kinds of activities you might want to do? How you'll communicate, that came up earlier in the Google Doc. Regular meetings are useful, but people communicate in different ways. Whereas we might love to be on Slack, you know, all day, every day, you know, our community partners might need phone calls or email updates. So what will work best? Funding or direct services, are there any in the mix? I want to lift up a question that came up last session. I think it was Shireen that asked about incentivizing. And again, Diana O'Neill also mentioned this. Excuse me. My apologies. I think it's useful to think about if you're going to bring to the table any funding or direct services. I will tell you that I often, if I was able to do something that's grant funded, and all of you have, I think, access to some engagement funds through America Amplified, providing,
Groundbreaking.
I'm sorry? Oh, providing an honoraria can be very helpful to offset some staff time or mileage or other of their direct costs. You might want to provide training. You know, a lot of folks want to know more about media literacy. They might want to have a journalist speak at their event or a conference. There might be some things that you offer as part of this. Then I also think just like asking the question about what will make this feel equitable, just asking the question about how the group will navigate disagreements can be really helpful. Not that you want to start off by assuming there'll be disagreements or problems, but just lifting up the possibility of, okay, we might hit a hiccup. How do we want to navigate this? And talking about it early on can kind of smooth out any potholes you might hit down the line. And then here is the thing that I find really important and useful. I really recommend that you put down all of your ideas in a memorandum of understanding. These are non-binding agreements, but they are agreements, and they give you a foundational document that you could go back to at any choice point or pivot point, or if you happen to have a disagreement. This is what you agreed to. You can change them, but they give you a place to start from a shared vision. And pro tip, I always have an MOU signing party to launch the partnership off on a celebratory tone. You can have, I actually have an MOU and I have everyone sign it. That's, of course, if you can meet in person. But I've done virtual signing parties where you lift up a, beverage to toast, just to have everybody really see themselves reflected in both the document and the agreement as you go forward. So that is my quick three-step, excuse me, three-step framework. Again, we'll talk about that as we go forward. But for now, let me toss it over to Brittany to really illustrate what that framework looks like in a case study that she led over with WFYI. Brittany?
Thank you, Jessica. Hello, everybody. I'm going to take you through a project I did as the engagement specialist for the health reporting team at WFYI. So we wanted to reach a primarily Spanish-speaking audience on an important health topic, how lead exposure affects your health, especially for kids. It's a big issue in Indianapolis, particularly in neighborhoods of color. And there was a specific neighborhood we wanted to reach with a high risk of lead exposure and also a big Spanish-speaking population. Why did we need a partner? We didn't speak Spanish. We didn't have the resources to reach the goal. We needed partners to help us get there. So the Health Beat and WFYI in general had already had a lot of conversations about prioritizing underserved communities. So we already had internal alignment on why to do a project like this. We had the loose idea for an event and knew we wanted partners who could be co-creators basically and help us shape that event into something accessible and meaningful for the community. So we ended up working with the health department, which has a Spanish-speaking community liaison. We worked with the neighborhood library, which has inroads in the particular neighborhood we were looking at, and also has a mission of empowering community members with knowledge like WFYI does. And we partnered with a lead testing project at a local university, which had free lead testing kits people could take home and do themselves. We had partnered with some of these folks in the past, not necessarily in this combination. It was kind of new to bring everybody together like this. But that's kind of why we were able to do co-creators with some of them, because we had already worked together. Now that is 4 partners. That's a lot of partners. So right at the top, the offer I made for the partnership was that I would be the one to take on the project management aspects, or as I like to call them, the cat herding So I herded all the cats and I got all the partners together, and we had an initial meeting to build our shared vision, which is on the next slide. So we talked about what was important to us, what we really wanted to make a difference in, and the shared vision we landed on was we wanted to empower neighbors with specific information about the danger signs of lead exposure, the means for testing for it, and paths forward to deal with it if they found it in their home. We decided the format for this would be a resource fair style of event. So tables of resources for adults with resources in Spanish, lead conscious activities for kids, and the health department would be on site with their van where actually people could get their blood tested right there for lead exposure. It would be staffed by the library's bilingual staff and volunteers. And WFYI would generate content on the front end to raise awareness about lead exposure, and on the back end to let people know that the event had happened and what we've done there. So you can see an example of the content over on the side there. What we ended up with was we worked with the health department liaison and a Spanish-speaking TikTok influencer to create lead awareness PSAs in Spanish, which they ran on their platforms. And we had some Instagram reels and pictures and a web write-up that we ran on our own channels. So several pieces of content came out of that on both ends of the project. So we had what we were doing. Now we just had to figure out how to get it done. So we picked a date and decided we would meet every 3 to 4 weeks leading up to that date. Our main organizing tool was actually a very simple Google Doc. You can see it on the side here. It is not pretty and by any means. It was just straight functional. We put all of our meeting agendas and all of our meeting notes in there. We wrote down all of our deadlines, and we listed all the tasks we'd need to perform in order to meet those deadlines. And everyone in the group just claimed a task according to their skill set and their bandwidth. So as the media partner, I handled a lot of the promotional creation and scheduling, and the library, which again had pretty significant inroads into the community, handles the hyperlocal neighborhood outreach. As things got done, we checked them off right there in the document and kept everybody updated that way. And the Google Doc kind of became a stand-in for a memorandum of understanding. It reminded us of our commitments to each other and to the project. And the project went really well. We ended up with almost 40 attendees. We handed out a bunch of free lead testing kits, produced some good content, and several people actually got their blood tested right there to look for lead exposure. We made some really good contacts in that local community for future work. And what I particularly like about this project was how aligned we all were from the get-go and how well we communicated, which is why I wanted to bring it up as an illustration of the principles Jessica has talked about in this presentation. So I'm going to bounce it back to Jessica.
Thank you. Beautiful. So that was a 3-step framework, series of questions. Paula's dropping a handout so that we have everything in this deck. We are putting in a handout so you can have that more at the ready than a deck. And thank you, Brittany, for that great illustration. Now we want to open the floor. What questions do you have? And what can we answer about partnerships? The framework, the why not? All right, Laura, bring it. Laura, you want to come off mic and just give us a little, or maybe you're trying. You are trying. All right. We will stay tuned while we wait for Laura. Anyone else, I see Josephine's in the queue. Why don't Laura, hold on. I'm going to go to Josephine and we'll come back to you. Josephine over at Georgia Public Broadcast. Hello, long time.
Hello. I'll lower my hand. So just looking at some of the projects, they seem like a really heavy lift. Involving a lot of meetings, and we're going to do the very best we can, but I don't anticipate that since 2 of us will be working on this project, with a little bit of help from our engagement folks who don't do the news end as much. I'm just concerned about how you make a smaller scale project work without multiple. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Sarah, my compadre in the project, has some of the same concerns, but how do you scale it down and still be effective? I guess is my question.
Right. I think I have I'll start by answering questions, but I'll also invite my team if they have ideas to jump in. But so Josephine, I have two ideas. One is you blue sky it, and then you work with your internal team and or with partners to bring it to the ground. That's one idea. And the advantage of that is that you get everyone excited about all the possibilities. And then you acknowledge the reality that community partners will likely also have, which is these are all the things we'd like to do. Here's, here are parameters. One is here's a timeline. If there's a budget, there's a budget. If there are some things you have to do or they have to do, and then you can invite the conversation. How could we scale this down in a way that really meets your needs and allows us to, and then you fill in the blank on your needs. I find community partners, they're a lot less resourced than most public radio stations and television stations. So they have ideas on how to, make things work. So that would be my first idea. Team members, any other thoughts that you would want to come to you that you would add to that? You'd put it in the chat or come off.
I would just add real quick that as much as partnerships are and can be a big lift, I think it's a great exercise to do. What would not happen if we didn't partner, and how might we not meet our mission if we don't? So there's the proactive of like, what could we gain, but I guess the way of saying it is, what do we lose by not partnering, and can we still meet our mission without it? So I think it's nice to kind of look at both things, because sometimes the math will show that even though it is a lot of work, it's actually worth it to meet your mission. Not always in every circumstance, but I suggest that too.
Laura, Josephine, I have another idea I'll drop in the chat for you, but Laura, do you want to jump in? Or maybe Laura, you can drop it in the chat. We want to make sure and get your question.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh man, darn. All right, we'll come back to you. GBH.
Hi, everyone. I think we kind of actually had two questions. The presentation was awesome. It made it really seem like it was a huge success and everything really was laid out, went well. So I'm wondering what bumps in the road were there. I'm sure there were some. And Annie had a question also.
Oh yeah, these are both for Brittany's project in particular, which was just really, really interesting. Also, a lot of people had said politics is a reason not to partner earlier. So we wondered how you navigated the stuff with the state and, what speed bumps you might have hit there too.
Okay, so the question, the first one, if I can repeat it back, was just like, what bumps in the road did we have for that particular project? Yeah, great question. So this one did go, like, it's unfortunate to bring like a nice shiny example that actually was really nice and shiny. The thing that I would highlight about this project was that I had gotten to work with the lead testing team before, and the library has been a partner with WFYI since before I joined this station. So those were pretty laid up. Like, we had established trust, we had figured out like how we were going to work together, that those were in good shape. The health department was a new one, and we did have to have some conversations a little bit about like, these are our boundaries, these are what we can and can't do, because we report on the health department in an accountability capacity, and just making that clear was a priority, like right up front. The biggest challenge was finding ways to communicate in Spanish, and then realizing throughout the process that there were moments like in the programming where we hadn't like accounted for being fully bilingual. So like, we introduced the event and it was like no one thought to write the introduction in Spanish. So it's just me giving the introduction and I did not write an introduction for half of our participants. So that was bad. Like I should have done a better job thinking about that. But for the most part, that one actually did go pretty well. I would say like not completely troubleshooting all the moments we would need to be more accessible was a problem. And then having some conversations about, again, our boundaries wasn't a problem, but it was something we had to navigate. What was the second question? Could you remind me? I'm sorry.
No, I think you got it. They were kind of tied up together. It was how to navigate working with a State Department office or
Yeah. I hope I didn't say State Department. It was the local, the county
okay.
health department. So if I said state, that was a mistake. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right. Let me see there. Let me, so GBH though, I'm sorry. I don't know your names. Did we get to all your questions or did you have, I feel like, yes. Okay, great. Love the double thumbs up. Okay, so Laura's question is that we have partnered with the public library, fantastic, and find their constituents are basically the same as ours. Interesting. So in terms of outreach, we have had a hard time getting Latinx people to attend, say, our voter information sessions, which are bilingual. So did Brittany partner with Spanish-speaking language media at all? And how did you reach those 40 people who came? Brittany.
I love this question because I get to nerd out on something that was like a totally new attempt for us. So in just chatting with the partner, like in those like beginning conversations of just like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? We had already brought in our health department liaison, and Marjorie, she's Latina, so she's from a Spanish speaking community. And she was like, have you thought about approaching any influencers? So TikTok influencers. And she pointed us to a couple of people who have like these TikTok accounts that are just Spanish informational stuff. So she had these two women she recommended who both have platforms kind of oriented around telling people about local events in the Indianapolis area, or like there was one who was kind of focused like specifically on moms and like questions that mothers might have to, about like their environment or about the like the local school system, trying to give them information about just like how to navigate things to give their kids the best lives possible. So we reached out to both of them. We got one for this project. She's the one who did like a lot of the local like events sharing. And I worked with Marjorie to kind of write a script. Marjorie translated it into Spanish, and we gave it to Ariana, who was the TikTok influencer, to sort of like tweak and adapt as she saw fit and that was the lead PSA. So it was about like the dangers of lead. And yes, we did pay the influencer. I made sure that was possible. So we worked with her, and Marjorie also, because she's the health department liaison, she had this like weekly web spot online where she would take 3 to 5 minutes to talk about an issue facing the community that she wanted them to be more aware of. And so the two of us together wrote a spot that she could use, and I pulled some like graphics and like video that she could also use, and she put that on her channel, which we didn't pay her for that because in her mind, it was kind of an exchange of content. Like she needed to fill that spot, and she was like, oh, that would be a really useful thing to be able to use.
And did Marjorie's piece go into Spanish too?
Yes.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. I have another question from you, Brittany, from Stephanie. You want to go ahead and look at that? It's in the chat.
Yes, measuring the success. So, such a great question. We measured a couple of different things. Because my project was grant funded, but there weren't a lot of metrics attached to the grant, I would just grab any useful number I thought would make a meaningful story. So I would record the number of participants who came. I recorded the number of like lead kits that went out. I tried to keep a grasp of like the number of like meaningful conversations that happen at tables, and the number of people who got their blood tested. We also had like other resources available. So like one of the giveaways was like seed packets that people could use in their gardens. So we tracked how many people took home seed packets, that kind of stuff.
And just out of curiosity, Brittany, did you come up with all of those indicators of success, or was that through a conversation with your partners?
Conversations with partners.
Right. So
Yeah.
again, one of the things I want to lift up is that one of the beauties of partnership is that you have this whole other brain trust that is coming on board with you. Once you have shared, goals and outcomes and an MOU, they're with you. And so they're the people who can help you figure out, like, what would success look like? How could we measure it? What part could you play in helping us measure it? How could you help gather this information? And, oftentimes these are organizations that are very dedicated to community development and have a lot of background in it, so they can bring that to the table. Great questions. We have time for a few more. Any other questions that we can answer? We don't have time for more, Elisa?
Yeah, I think we were moving into our last activity, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. This is why when you have COVID brain, you want to have teammates, partners, collaborators. Let me say this then. If you have questions that you haven't been able to get answered or that are bubbling, drop them in the chat and we will get back to you. We won't leave anybody hanging. So, last activity as we go into the home stretch for our time together today. All right, everyone, we got a quick little poll for you. Abby, can you bring up the poll? This is an experiment we want to do. And we can see, there you go. So if you would all go ahead and let us know on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you feel to develop a community partnership? Let's see where people are at. Oh, okay, this is interesting. All right, let me looking at this. Wow, let me give you another 30 seconds to see where people are at. This is pretty amazing. All right. So I'm just going to have a look at this and just call this out. It's really interesting to me that that more people in this group are, at least 5 and above, and most being at 7. So that's amazing. We can go ahead and close that poll. And what I'd like to do, oops, let me pull this here. So here is my question to you. Having done that poll, I'm really curious to find out what is standing in the way of being at a 10. And what I want to do is give you some time to think aloud in first drafts with another station. So here's what we're going to do. There we go. We're going to put you once more to the final breakout group of the session. And take some time and just share with each other what's standing in the way, what are the blockers, and how might you address those blockers and get feedback. This is kind of a peer networking, peer support moment. What's standing in the way from you getting to be a 10, and how might you get closer? What advice could you get from your colleagues? All right, Abby, go ahead and send them into their groups, and we'll call you back in about 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Oh, I can see Michael. Hello, Brittany and Sophie. Who's coming? Emily, Joseph. Everyone's coming back. Chris. I love it. Welcome back, everyone. I am hoping that you had some good time together. We have a few more people still coming in. There's Paula, Elma, Kyla, Sarah, Ashley, Mia, Shaylee. Look at all this. Heidi, Elaine. Hello. 9 PBS, Camilla, WMYC, Catherine, many more coming into the room. So I'm so grateful again that you could be here today. And I hope that you had a really lovely conversation with a peer station to talk about how to go from wherever you were in the poll to a 10. Again, these are conversations we will continue in our cohorts and in our coaching. As we start to wrap up, I am a big fan of feedback. So I am curious if you would go ahead and drop in the chat what's one thing you are taking away from this session about community partnerships. And it's not a chat waterfall, so just go ahead and type something in anytime you are ready. Would love to hear what's one thing you are taking away from this session about community partnerships. And I'll put that in the chat. There you go. I will stop my screen so we could all see each other. Let me go ahead as we're getting your ideas in the chat. I want to give it over to Elisa to start to wrap us up.
Okay. We're going to bring in a little holiday music here. Does anybody hear any holiday music? Okay.
We want to send you out on a high note.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. So we talked a little bit about how useful it is to have an MOU. We will have a template of an MOU for a community partnership on our website, and we will share it with you via email after this session. We have established cohorts. We have moved you guys into cohorts. We're still kind of massaging the edges and talking to some of you, but you'll receive an email next week about your cohort. We're going to be looking to set up a cohort meeting and a one-on-one with your trainer, likely a new trainer, in January, so look for that. The next training is January 10th, 2 p.m. Paula, you can throw the register link if you want to in the chat so everybody has it in case you haven't seen it and you haven't done that. You've been throwing questions into the chat as we go along. We are really working to answer all of those questions and send those answers back to you. And we're going to create an FAQ, frequently asked questions, on our website where you can go and read all the questions everybody has and all the answers we are creating. Finally, and this is where it's going to get exciting. In January, you're going to receive a tip sheet with the embed code for your Harkin question prompt to go on your website. And you're going to receive instructions on how to log into our public media election information portal to verify and review the answers to the questions that are going to come in. So look for that email. Look for an email about your cohort and set up some one-on-ones with your trainer and your cohort meeting. I know that's a lot, but you know what? Forget all about it for the next 2 weeks and go have a fabulous holiday.
All right. And to close us out, we've got solstice coming. We've got Kwanzaa. We are in Hanukkah. I thought what we could do for this end of the year is just all get together and give each other a little bit of a high five. So here's what I'd like you to do. And those of you who are not on camera, this could be your moment to come on camera. So just take your hands and put them here, palms facing each other to start. All right. Then turn them. And I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. And at 1, you just go to the edge of your Zoom room and we will have a communal high five. Are you ready? All right. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Get some sound going for us. Boom. Woo! You can also do this if you want. Right on. Give yourself some high fives. We got through it.
Thank you all.
Beautiful. And to send you out with some humor and levity as it is Hanukkah, we want to present you with a little Adam Sandler. So we're going to load that up. We'll be here for a few minutes if you want to debrief or talk to us. Otherwise,
Hanukkah. So much Hanukkah to celebrate Hanukkah.